Rightio guys, welcome back to another episode of Off the Grid. This one's a bit different, sitting here in the shed, well just outside the shed anyway, and we're going to be talking about what to do and how we plan our big trips.
Yeah, so I've obviously just come back from Fraser, and then even I found when I was in Fraser, a lot of you guys were asking, what do you pack, how do you know what to pack? And so we thought we'd do a quick video, nice and simple, and try and give you guys a little bit of knowledge of how we do it.
So in this video we'll be talking about how we plan, where we go, who's involved, what sort of gear we take, give you guys the whole
picture, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
So sit back, enjoy, and enjoy. Alrighty, so planning where you're going to go. It all depends on what you want to do. So for example, last year we hit up the Victorian High Country. That was something we decided as a group, between Ben and myself. We put a message out to some of our mates. They were keen to tag along, and that meant that from there we could work out how we were going to go about what we were going to do.
Yeah, so pretty much, obviously, if you're going to have a big group of people, you're not going to be able to go down these tight tracks and find these small campgrounds. So for our high country trip, we have we have 3 cars and 4 dudes. Is that right? Yeah. So we were able to, I suppose, hit some of those tighter spots, the smaller campgrounds, which is awesome. That's what we like. Which I suppose overall means you can get away from those crowds a bit too. So.
Yeah, so like while we were away, obviously we caught up with some other friends over in Victoria. They tagged along, so that meant that another car in the convoy really meant that we had to plan where we were going to stay, make sure those campgrounds were just a little bit bigger. But yeah,
that's pretty much how we work. And then once we have that destination of where we want to go, then we pretty much work our trip or plan our trip around that. So obviously, if we're going to big high country, our spare parts are going to be completely different to going to Fraser Island or something like that.
Yeah.
So obviously the high country is a bit more, I suppose, tough on your vehicle. So for Sean, he had to bring CVs.
Yep. So
stuff like that.
So preparing for the trip, really especially for the Colorado, I put on some new tyres and stuff because my old tyres were wearing thin. Upgraded the suspension because it was starting to bag out. Then decided that because I've went the bigger tyres and there's a bit more stress on the front end, that I would take some spare CVs and some spare tie rods, just because they are the weaker points on the Colorado, and I didn't want something to go wrong and not have the spare parts.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing. You know your car, you know what the weak points are on your car, so you know how to really work around that. Hey, so as Sean said, he knows that the tie rods and CVs are some of the weaker bits, especially with the lifts that he's got running in it now. So yeah, that's kind of how we work with spare parts. Yeah. Alright, so our pre-trip prep. So once we have our destination and all that, what we did for the Vic High Country, we had all the boys over for a night, and we pretty much had key spots. So we knew that we wanted to go to Craig's Hut, Dargo, and where else? And Woods Point. So our planning is, we're not going to lie, it's pretty simple. So what we decided was pretty much, we went straight to Mansfield, went straight up to Craig's Hut, and then from Craig's Hut, we pretty much, while we're in Craig's Hut, we make our way and plan how we want to get to Dargo. So there's not an exact route that we have already pre-planned or anything. We just do it pretty much day by day, and that's just how we work better. I know it might be different for other people, but that's just what we like.
Yep. So also, like in pre-trip prep as well, you might be like preparing your vehicle, doing your pre-services and stuff. So for example, just before we went, the collie had a complete overhaul. She had diff breathers put in because we were going to be in the high country doing those river crossings. Had a full gearbox oil done, diff oil was done, engine oil, you name it, like the work's done. Just because I wanted it to be A1 for that whole trip. Didn't want any issues happening.
Yeah. I suppose going into that spare part stuff again, we're not exactly, I suppose we can say we're pretty slack on it. We don't bring what we should, but I don't know. Even like tools and that, we have a basic socket set, your screwdrivers, your spanners and that, but I don't know. I suppose if we were heading more remote, we'd have to definitely consider that a lot more and probably bring a lot more tools.
In saying that though, most things on a vehicle either include your sockets or your spanners, so it's pretty good as long as you've got a big hammer to knock things around. I guess she's all good.
Yeah, that's it. So, packing. That's pretty simple for us, so pretty much what I do, and I'm pretty sure you do it too, Sean. I have a list of notes on my phone that I've just prepared for that sport. It's been in there for a couple of years now, and it's kind of, I've just added every time I go camping, I've just added something that I pretty much just follow those notes. So, and to be honest with you, I don't really forget that much by just using that note,
So depending on the trip you're sort of doing as well, like if you're just doing a weekender, generally like if you're packing, you're not going to be like so pinpoint on like, oh, I need this, 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 and this. Like if you forget like a table or something, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's also not going to be the end of the world on a big trip. But when we went to the high country, because we had the 3 vehicles, it's a bit different. So between the 4 of us that were there, we had 3 fridges. So we ran one as a meat fridge, one as a drinks fridge, and then one as like a dairy and a vegetable fridge. So you separate all the stuff, you make it like nice and easy for while you're away.
I think even adding to that, like pots and pans. If there's 3 of us, we don't all have to bring pots and pans. We organise like one guy will bring all the pots and pans, maybe one guy will bring the barbecue, just stuff like that. So we're not all doubling up on it. That's always a good way to do it as well. So yeah,
it keeps your weight down as well, which is really good. At least that way then makes your car a lot lighter, and you're not using as much fuel.
Yeah, we also have. Well, both Sean and I have storage boxes, so mine's always packed. It's always got the essentials in it, so it'll have my stove in there, it's got Glad wrap, stuff like that, all my cleaning stuff, tea towels and all that. It's got all my cutlery, all the stuff for the barbecue, and that just always lives in that container. So to be honest, to get up and camping, I pretty much only need to lift up that container, chuck it on the back of the ute, and I'm almost set to go. It's just some clothes and a swag. So it's nice and easy like that too.
Makes it super simple, and anybody can do that. If you've got a spare box at home, you can throw your camping gear in it, and then because you're going away, and when you finish with that item, you're going to put it back in that box. So it's going to make it super simple. When you come back, because you're going to put it back in the shed. You're going to 6 months down the time, a month down the time, you're going to grab that box again. You're going to throw it in the back of the ute, and you've already got everything. Makes life just super simple, and you won't forget about those items.
That's all I can highly recommend. Is exactly doing that, because it helps out a lot.
So I guess the big picture is like your costs. How much does it cost to go on these trips? It's different for everyone. Everyone's got different budgets, and can spend a certain amount on a trip. Those bigger trips, you're obviously going to spend a lot more money. Those trips that you just do a weekend, they obviously cost you a lot less. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. So if we're talking for fuel, I know with my trip, I'll kind of get a rough estimate on how much it's going to cost me to get to that destination. So Fraser, I knew that fuel was sitting like $1.60, so I knew to get up to Fraser, do my stuff around Fraser, and get back, it was going to cost around that $2,000, $1.5 to $2,000 mark in fuel. So that I've got to put a budget on, and that's just for fuel. So,
yeah, and the Collie's a little bit different. Doesn't have the big V8 in it, obviously, but she still uses a fair bit of fuel. So for example, in the high country, because you leave, obviously being Adelaide based, we left from Adelaide and you drive across into Mansfield, so you got, we can pretty much get halfway and then do a top up, and then then once you get into Mansfield, which is where we started, you do your last top up before you head into the high country. So, from there we topped up and head in, and between myself and Hayden, who had the Hilux on that trip, we really pushed our vehicles. We had our fuel lights come on, about 30 k's out of Dargo, so we're pretty fortunate that we're pretty close, but just something to be aware of, especially if you're going to be in the high country for such a long period of time.
No, I think that's something that we probably didn't really think about too much pre-planning, but now looking at it back in hindsight, maybe we should have bought a jerry can each to be able to, as a bit more safety fuel, so that's always a good idea as well, I think.
And then obviously while you're covering costs as well, you got your food and maintenance, so you want to put a bit of money aside as well, so if something goes wrong, like you bust a CV, or bloody tail shaft falls out or something like that, something busts, you've got a bit of money there so you can get back in, get that part fixed or replaced, and get back out on the tracks.
Yeah, no, 100%. You always want to make sure you pretty much overestimated the cost instead of underestimating it, so so you've always got that safety money, just in case something does go wrong, because you really don't know until you're in that situation, I suppose.
Yeah. And our trip into the high country, we were gone for 10 days, I think it was. And that's 4 blokes, that, and to buy your food and stuff, that's a big shop. So what we did is we all went into the shop together. We all go through. You get the essentials you need, maybe a couple of little luxury items. Get to the checkout. You split that bill 4 ways, and then for us, we just did half the trip shop, because we had one of our mates that was heading down back into Melbourne just to catch up with his family while he was over there. And then, so we flicked him some more money, and he managed to pick up the rest of the supplies that we needed for the trip, because we still had a lot of spares. You always buy more than what you actually need.
Oh, 100%. Again, that's good as well, because you don't really know what situation you're going to be put in. You could get stuck for a couple of days, so it's always good to, I suppose, over-prepare yourself. Because you know what, at the end of a trip, you can always take food home. So I suppose that's good like that. You can always make sure you have plenty of beers and all that kind of stuff.
Beers never go astray around that campfire.
Yeah.
So obviously everyone would know at the moment, we got COVID-19, well, COVID, sort of makes it hard to go travelling and stuff. So, for those big interstate trips, makes it a lot harder, especially like Victoria with their borders closed, WA with their hard border closures, really does make it difficult to decide where you're going to go.
Yeah, and I think that is something that you definitely have to pre-plan, because obviously laws are always changing, so you might need that negative test result or the border passes and all that stuff. So before we do an interstate trip, that's something that we always keep updated. And as I said, they're always changing, so you might have looked at it 2 weeks ago, but make sure you always look before you go, because it could be something completely different. You might not need to do any testing.
Yeah, so I think for the Fraser trip, you had to get a negative test and get a border pass, correct?
Yeah, so going over there, we had to get a negative test going into Queensland and a border pass, but as I said, I was there for 3 weeks. Coming back, I needed absolutely nothing, so that's just how quickly it changes. So it was simple, but yeah, this is something good to keep in mind, because if I didn't do that, obviously I wouldn't be going over to Queensland.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and also going on to maps as well, what type of maps we use.
Yeah, so I guess everyone's got different types of maps. You got your Google Maps and stuff. Like if you were just to leg it there, you want your quickest route, you'd use Google Maps. But then once you get off into the bush, you want something a bit more detailed. And for us personally, we use the HEMA HX ones.
Yeah.
For example, on there you've got the built-in high country map, so it shows you all the terrains and the difficulty of the tracks, which makes it really easy. But I think one thing that we found, especially for the high country trip, was that having paper maps was
nothing beats it. Yeah.
Nothing beats it. In the morning we'd pull out the paper maps and we could check to see where we were going to go, what we wanted to do, what we wanted to check out. Really just showed everything on a large scale, and as a group we can all stand around and go have a group discussion about what we're going to do.
Yeah, and they're super detailed, but also something that I wouldn't always rely on the map. So I know there were tracks that we hit up in the high country that were rated to an extreme, and we did them no problem at all. I wouldn't even rate them a medium. But then we went and hit up an easy or a medium track, and ended up being lockers, winches, we needed everything. So I suppose if you might want to look into that side of it as well, because you can't always trust the maps, even though they're bloody awesome, because they are so detailed. They'll have all your campsites, have if it's got toilets, running water and all that on there. But yeah, maybe a little bit more research as well if you want to start looking into that stuff.
And obviously with the tracks comes campsites, so those maps have all your campsites listed as well. But something we found as well, the high country is just littered with campsites. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you're going to find a campsite. So those campsites that are listed on the maps are generally your more popular spots. So they might have something iconic there that you want to check out, or a nice creek flowing through it, and that's why they're marked. But then you got your huts and stuff there as well. And for us especially, we found that one of the campsites we didn't even mean to camp at was actually probably one of the best campsites we stayed at on that trip.
Yeah, that was just a campsite that we took a wrong turn pretty much, and ended up, and we loved it, and definitely be back there. But I also think with your HEMA and all that campsites, something that we use a lot is wiki camps, and I think that is excellent, because that again has all the detail in it, and I seem to think that they're pretty accurate. That's all we used all the way up to Fraser, so we didn't have any going up to Fraser. We didn't have any dedicated stops. We would just pretty much drive till we get tired and look up wiki camps, be like, oh sweet, there's a campsite 20 k's away, let's drive to there. And that's just pretty much how we worked, and that's something that was really good about wiki camps.
So wiki camps is an app that you get on your phone. I reckon it's about $8 for the iPhone. It's probably the same on the Samsung, I would assume. But yeah, you can put all your filters on, whether you want free camps, your dogs, full drive access only. And one of the good parts about it too is you can, when you click on the campsite and you look into it, it shows you what facilities it has. You can look at images. It'll show you the cost, if that's if the campsite does cost you money. So people put comments on saying it might be $13 a night or something like that. So it just makes it super simple, and really allows you to further plan on how you're gonna go about your trip.
Yeah, and something that I've also only just really discovered recently is look at like the Victorian High Country. The Vic government has an actual app dedicated to all the full driving. They've got hunting there, they've got walking trails. So you can look at the government websites and see if they've got an app for that as well. So I wish I knew about that app when I was in High Country, because the ratings on that app would probably be a bit better, maybe for HEMA. I don't know if they're more accurate or more updated. So that's also something you might want to look into as well.
100%.
Yeah. So we put a poll up on our Instagram and just asked a question to say, what do you guys want to know how we pre-plan for trips? And one of them was how we manage our camera gear on camping trips. So, well, I suppose we just have camera bag. We pretty much just use our phones, and we've got a mic that we use as well. And yeah, that's it's in a camera bag. We try and protect it a lot. We got the drones, which are always, if we're not using them, we usually have them back in their cases.
Got the GoPros. They're generally just like ready to go on the dash or on the passenger seat, just because you never know when something's going to happen. They're just quick and easy. You can like pretty much point and shoot, click the button, they're ready to go. And then obviously with that, like, once we get to camp, we're generally doing a dump of footage and stuff like that. At least those SD cards are freed up for the next day. And then with that as well, like, making sure that everything's like charged up, ready to go, especially like, the heat knocks the battery life out of things, and the cold absolutely kills things as well.
100%.
You might have a fully charged drone battery, and normally they'll last 27 minutes. For our drones, that's what our flight time is. But the second that you put that up into the sky on it might be cold and up in the high country there, that drone battery may only last 13 minutes. So you really got to be aware of what's happening.
Yeah, I think firsthand we've experienced that as well on one of our trips. Bought a track trip, we had a full charge battery, took it out, and we ended up getting halfway out there, and the thing had dropped down to like 40%, and we had to land it out there because we didn't have enough battery to get it back. So yeah, definitely what Sean said is keep an eye on that battery, make sure they're always topped up before you use them, and dump your footage. It's so much easier. Well, we find editing as well if they're in dedicated folders and that from days.
Yeah. So another question we had as well was like rig maintenance on trips and like spare parts. So we've sort of covered the spare parts like earlier on in the video, but for rig maintenance while we're out there, it's just a matter of like before we're hitting the tracks, you're dropping your tire pressures. It really does make the most out of the life that you get with them. And then throughout the day, you're obviously doing your tracks and stuff. You get to camp, generally just do a once over of once you set up, making sure everything's still Mickey Mouse.
Checking your oils and all that kind of stuff, making the fluids are still topped up.
Yeah, and first thing in the morning, generally before we leave as well, I'm checking oils again just to make sure, checking over everything, making sure there's no leaks, because that's the last thing you need when you're out in the tracks is a major leak. And
it's better to get onto it earlier than once the damage is really done. Like even just chucking your head under the car at camp, just making sure, sweet, everything looks good, can't see any oil under there. It's just
preventative maintenance, really.
Yeah, just trying to pre-do everything like that, so that's good. Yeah, and I think I just wanted to touch on with spare parts. Obviously we did touch on that a fair bit, but I just kind of thought if you're going out by yourself, you're probably going to bring more spare parts than what you are if you're in a group, just for safety reasons, and I think that's just probably common sense.
I would say so. You want to make sure you're in the best position yourself when you're out there solo, and even when you're with mates and stuff. Like if people have got the same cars and stuff, really makes a difference. That was another question we got is how do we go about group trips and stuff like that. Everyone just gets in together, makes life really simple. We all split the bill, makes life easy for everyone, cuts costs for everyone as well. And then, when you're out in the tracks, you're having a bit of a laugh, and there's nothing better than sitting around the fire at night with your mates, just having a laugh and a couple cold beers.
Yeah, I suppose all us boys, we all work together. We all have the same mentality, so there's nothing that we really disagree on. It's just super chill, and we thoroughly enjoy it out there.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that wraps up today's video. So if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like rating. Comment down below if you want more of these sort of sit-down videos, being more informative, maybe some behind-the-scenes stuff.
I suppose especially even if you want videos like this that are specific to each trip we do, who knows, we could do something like that,
Yeah, so subscribe for more content, guys. Really does show the support. We've been loving the support lately. Our Instagram's been blowing up, and we've got some big things coming this year,
Yeah.
some big trips, so we're looking forward to it, and we hope you guys are too. So I think until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of Off the Grid.
Cheers, guys.